Special thanks to Pluto for helping me learn the strategies on this track. Welcome to part 2 of basic training. In this video we're going to cover all the strategies and shortcuts for Crown City on 150cc. The recommended build for this track is going to be the high-speed combo of Wiggler and Roadster Royale. You may notice that I'm using Bulldozer, but that's just because I set my PB based on an older version of the world record for this track. When the run begins, we're going to go to the right, and then just before hitting the third boost panel, we're going to start a charge jump. You may have heard that charge jumps are slower than just driving straight, and while that's generally true, chaining any sort of boost into a charge jump will preserve your momentum and prolong the boost, which saves you a bit of time. Now, this next section is a colossal pain in the neck, so let's start by talking about the easy strats. When you get to the second coin here, you want to start a charge jump and then hit the rail on the right. Just before you get to the end of it, do another right trick and you'll be able to hit the following rail with enough speed that you'll get a bit of airtime. Do a mid-air left trick and grab the coins, and then it's just some straightforward drifting around the next few turns. When you do this left drift in between the pole and the fire hydrant, make sure to be a little bit further to the right than you might think. Clipping the pole doesn't really do anything, but clipping the fire hydrant will kill your run pretty much right away. Now, that's the easy version. What we're about to go over really doesn't save all that much time in and of itself, but it does help us max out on coins more quickly, and since Crown City is such a long track, the time save adds up over the course of the run. Everything is pretty much the same until we do that mid-air trick off the second rail. After that, we're going to do the most obnoxious trick in the universe off of this curb here and then land in a charge jump, chaining our trick boost into a charge jump off the first car. Note that you don't need to press the trick button here, your cart will automatically trick off the car as long as you jump on top of it. Now, while you're in midair, hold left to move towards this car in the back. Before you land, move your joystick back to neutral and then press and hold the jump button to land in another charge jump. Now, when you've built up a mini turbo, release the charge jump to get another trick off the second car, and then move towards the left before landing in yet another charge jump. While you're charging the jump, hold left and chain your last trick boost into a final left charge jump. Now, I know that's kind of a lot to take in, but the basic story is that from the moment we trick off of the curb, what we're trying to do is constantly be moving to the left and chaining trick boosts into charge jumps to extend those trick boosts as much as we can. And like I said, it's actually not all that much faster than just doing the easy strats, but every time you bounce off of a car you get a coin, which does add up over the course of a 2-minute long track. One important thing to point out is that curb trick can be really annoying to learn, but I've got a fairly consistent visual cue that I use. I wait to trick until my right 2 tires are completely on top of the sidewalk, with my left 2 tires on the curb to the left of it. The trick is much later than you'd think, and it's pretty precise, but the good news is that even if you do miss the trick, you can still do the rest of the strategy the same as before. Now, after drifting around the next couple turns, we're going to drive straight through the alleyway and drive up the rail in the middle of the stairs. You want to trick more or less immediately, and then once you get to the next bend in the rail, do a left trick and keep holding left to do a wall ride. The goal here is to then do a right trick in such a way that you land as close to the top of the stairs as possible so that you can get a really tight line around the shortcut. Unfortunately, I don't have much of a visual cue for when you should trick off the wall because it kind of depends on when you started the wall ride. But regardless, as long as you make it over the stairs, all you have to do is mushroom through the off-road. The mushroom will run out before you can fully clear it though, so release your super mini turbo as soon as you get it. Coming up on this ridiculously long straightaway, you'd think there's some breathing room here, but it's actually pretty complex, even for the relatively easy stuff that I do. Charge jumping onto the rail and then doing a left trick onto the car really isn't all that hard to do, but it does depend on you getting here fast enough to get to the car. But after that, the real showstopper here are the 3 long rails. It's really hard to explain properly what's going on here, but basically, you don't want to just spam the hell out of the trick button. You need to make sure that your cart is, fully on the rail before you start your next trick, because you want to make sure that your boost actually comes out first. So the timing is trick, and then after you land, wait for maybe 1/10 of a second and then trick again, and then rinse and repeat. The only other complexity here is that you want to charge jump onto the second rail to avoid the airtime that comes with driving straight onto it, and then on the last rail, you want a left trick off of it. Do one more charge jump off of this car, and then you should have 16 coins by the end of section 1. Now before we move on, let's talk about what the world record does here. First off, they charge jump onto the first rail, but this depends on you actually getting into a good position after the car trick, which is not the most consistent thing in the world. They then left trick off the end of the first rail and trick off of the pole, doing a series of mid-air course correction tricks to chain the trick boost into a charge jump off this Piranha Plant car onto the right. Now, truth be told, it's honestly not that hard to learn how to do all of this mechanically, but the problem is that the Piranha Plant shoots these little fireballs out the back, and if you get to this part of the track at a bad time, you will get hit by them. So again, it's one of those things that's definitely worth learning if you're trying specifically to set a really fast time trial time, but it's not really going to be something you can rely on if you're just trying to get better at online play. Now, the last difference between my run and the world record as far as this long straightaway is concerned is that they still hit the right-hand side of the third rail, but they do another left trick off of it into a series of left tricks off the pole to land in another charge jump while grabbing 2 coins. They then chain this charge jump into a trick off of the finish line. Interestingly enough, this all makes Section 1 about 150 milliseconds slower than what I do, but it saves about half a second in Section 2, which more than makes up the difference. One thing I should point out is that just like with the cars, tricking off of these poles is automatic, and as long as you make contact with one while you're in midair, you'll trick without having to do any additional inputs on the controller. It sounds awesome, and in some ways it is, but trust me when I say this is going to majorly suck in a few minutes. But thankfully, Section 2 is a lot less nightmarish than Section 1. There are a couple of interesting things for us to learn here though. The first is in the rail section. You can actually trick super early onto the first rail. If you watch in slow motion, you can see the moment when my cart starts to snap onto the rail, and if you trick here, it'll give you an extra trick boost. This in and of itself saves time, but the really nice thing is that it sets you up for the next strategy, which is to right trick off of the rail and land in a charge jump. Drive off of the first boost panel, and if your initial trick timing was good, you'll get a charge jump mini turbo just before getting to the second boost panel. If you release the charge jump just as you get to the very start of the boost panel, it'll give you a ton of forward momentum, which saves like 1/4 of a second, which might not sound like much, but it's huge in time trial terms. Unfortunately, I messed it up in my own run, but you can see how this is supposed to look in the world record. And one additional tip that I have is that once you get the first trick boost onto that yellow rail, you want to be holding right to give you a little bit of course correction before landing on that rail. The next couple of turns are pretty straightforward, but once you get to the final boost panel going into the gigantic golden tire, you want to trick off of the angled bit on the left and then aim for the leftmost coin when landing. Even if you have 20 coins already, you still want to use this as a visual cue since it sets you up for the next turn. The idea here is that we're going to drift through this first yellow and black bar, then go around the big barriers and then drift through the second yellow and black bar before tricking. One cool thing about this part of the track is that you'd think this huge gap on the right is a Lakitu zone, but as it turns out, it's not. So if you have a feather, you can use it to cut the gap and save a huge amount of time. Though obviously this isn't particularly helpful in time trials. Now to finish up Section 2, we hold almost but not quite all the way up on the joystick to get down to the left-hand side of the rails and then finish the straightaway just like we did on Section 1. Section 3 is also mostly free. We're going to mini turbo trick off the first ramp by releasing our mini turbo at the same time as we trick, and then we're going to start a left drift. You want to release that mini turbo and then drive straight through the off-road while using a mushroom. You're not drifting through this first turn. And then for the second shortcut, use your mushroom and drift in such a way that you go around the right-hand side of the first tree with the left-hand side of the second tree. And once you charge up a super mini turbo, get ready to enter the 7th circle of hell. Do a left charge jump to get onto the rail, and then right when you get to the cap at the end of the rail, do a left trick and hold left to aim for the tree. As you may have guessed, if we run into it, we'll automatically trick. And we then want to navigate around this wall and land on the sidewalk below. Trick off of it and then chain that trick boost into a final charge jump to get onto the rail, and then we're going to play the end of Section 3 exactly the same as the start of Section 1. So what makes this such a pain in the neck? You might think that it's the trick off of the tree, but believe it or not, that's actually the easy part since the game gives you so much control over where your cart moves during trick animations. No, what's actually awful is this goddamn street lamp just before it. I mentioned that we're using Wiggler Billdozer for its high speed, but the problem is that Billdozer is friggin' ginormous, which makes it very difficult to get to the tree without clipping the street lamp. And if this happens, because the game automatically tricks off of stuff for you if you're in midair, you'll get like 10 light years of airtime, which doesn't actually kill your ability to do the cut, but it will cost you about half a second, which as you can imagine is a devastating thing to have happen 2 minutes into a run. Now before we check out my personal best, there are a couple of additional world record strategies that I wanted to talk about. The first is pretty much only useful in time trials, and sees you do a series of rail tricks and wall rides to enter Section 3 in much the same way as we did Section 2, i.e. with a trick boost chained into a charge jump, chained into a trick off of the finish line. Like the Section 1 strategies, this actually makes Section 2 a few hundredths of a second slower, but then it saves about a tenth of a second in Section 3. The other major difference between my run and the world record is that for the second shortcut in Section 3, they approach the shortcut way outside before taking a pretty hard right, using their mushroom and then jumping into this tree after going up the curb. This allows them to cut off a big part of the following right turn, and truth be told, it's really not that hard to do, provided that you actually hit the tree. The problem is that these boxes are in your way, which makes it very difficult to even see where the tree is at, so you're kind of going in blind here. A setup that I've found is that if you aim right here at the middle point of the left-hand side of this box, right in front of the tree, that should put you in a good position to hit it. I also got some advice from Pluto, who's currently battling it out for the world record on this track, and he said that shaking the controller to trick makes this strategy a lot more consistent. Now, thankfully, we're finally done learning about all the strategies for this track. Let's talk about it a bit more while checking out my current personal best. And as always, if you found this video helpful, please don't forget to drop a like and share it with your friends so that it can get spread to more people, because that is by far the best way to help out the channel. Also, special thanks to Pluto from the MK World Time Trial server. He's got more than 600 hours logged on just this one track and was incredibly helpful when it came to explaining the strategies to me so that I could help put this video together for you all. Now, let's talk about Crown City. This is definitely one of the more interesting tracks in the game for me. It's seen a ton of effort put into its optimization, which has made it so that even long straightaways that would otherwise have been really boring to play on are genuinely complex and fun. I think one of my favorite things about this track is all the different ways that it uses charge jumps to save time. I've always been a fan of the little optimizations because while they don't seem like they really matter all that much, they add up over time, and it's these strategies that really separate the good players from the great players. Not that I'm saying I'm a great player, mind you, just that I really appreciate when a track makes you work to find those small time saves, and this is a really obvious example of a track where that work has been put in. Now, I do have to nitpick a bit with how the game automatically forces you to trick off of pole-shaped objects when you don't always want to. Because I sort of design my own runs to be as consistent as possible since I primarily time trial for online play, and so while I did have fun learning the track, I'd find myself consistently getting into Section 3 a few tenths ahead of my personal best, only to lose my run because I was a frame too early with my left trick off of the ending rail. Yeah, I know that at the end of the day it's a skill issue on my part, but it just doesn't make sense to me that there's no way to tell the game that I only want to trick off of these things when I specifically do some kind of input on the controller. But you know, it is one of the flashier shortcuts in the game, so I can really only be so much of a hater at the end of the day. Because truth be told, if you just use a smaller cart like the baby blooper, all this stuff is pretty easy to avoid. And no, I didn't just write this section of the script after realizing that my voiceover was 20 seconds too short. And honestly, I'm offended that you'd even suggest that in the first place. Are we done yet? Overall, I really enjoyed Crown City, and I think it does a fantastic job of showcasing Nintendo's creativity when it comes to designing sectional tracks, and I hope that you all love the track as well.